greeting, good night, and good evening. Thank y'all so much for joining us here tonight in the studio, live from New Jersey Broadcast Studio. It is phenomenal opportunity that I have to be here, sitting here, and to be able to greet you tonight. So I want to just thank you so much for coming and being a part of tonight. I ask of you, please go ahead now, share this to your entire team. This is going to be a team building webinar webcast, so it's going to help you and your team learn how to structure your church for growth. So I want to open up with prayer, and then I want to begin to just encourage you in the things of God. Father, we thank you so much for your amazing grace. Thank you for the privilege to talk to your people about kingdom building, about structuring their church for growth. We thank you, Lord God, that hearts will be open to receive exactly what heaven has to say tonight, and you'll receive all the glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen. As you know, every single Monday, first Monday of the month, we're coming together to talk to you about things that you put in your survey that you wanted training on. And that is our privilege to be able to talk to you and talk about things that you have asked. Each of these sessions will feature special guests with expertise in various areas, and you'll have the opportunity to connect with them, ask questions, and receive guidance to help bring you vision for your church and for your life. Additionally, from time to time, we'll have special key leaders to come and talk with us, possibly from the executive committee or even our other general overseer offices. So I am excited tonight. I'm looking forward to what God has to say to us through our special guest speaker. And I want to pause again for those who may have joined late and ask you to go ahead, share this to every single person of your level 1 leadership as well as your level 2 leadership people. This will be valuable training that you will not want them to miss. So I have the privilege tonight to introduce to you our guest speaker, phenomenal in leadership, phenomenal in team building. I have the privilege to introduce to you one of our very own, Dr. Corvina Denton, who holds a degree in leadership development and team building training. And so Dr. Corvina comes with a wealth of knowledge. I had the privilege to personally hear her do this teaching, and I thought it was so good that our entire community could benefit from this training. So I want you to please grab your pencil, grab your paper, open up your iPad to your notes, and get ready for a download from heaven that will help structure your church for growth. I want you to welcome Dr. Corvina Denton as she begins to do the training tonight.
Thank you so much, Bishop Birch, for the opportunity to serve. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to serve. It is always a privilege to be able to serve in the kingdom of God.
Amen.
I am excited tonight to be a part of the work that you are doing with Ministers Monday, and I do consider it an honor to be able to bring what I used to believe God has given me for the secular world into the church. So it's an honor to be here with you tonight as a part of your Ministers Monday.
Thank you so much.
Do you want me to continue?
Yes, I want you to go ahead and
All right,
begin
so I'll
your
tell you a little
teaching
bit
now.
about myself. I am a lifelong educator. I had my first teaching credential in Jamaica, West Indies. I migrated to the state, did my studies in special education and my doctorate in special education leadership with organizational leadership with an emphasis on teaching special population. And so that has given me the opportunity to work with teachers in training and help those teachers in training be able to build classrooms that are inclusive. And so I know over time, inclusive education has taken a new turn. But when I speak of inclusive education, I think of creating a space where everyone has the opportunity to use their skills and everyone also has the opportunity to be effective in whatever they're doing. So today, when we talk about team building, when we talk about building strategic groups within our church, we're truly talking about an opportunity to put people together who work really well together. So I'll start by saying, when we think about team building, we must first think about who is our team. Who are the people that we have on our team? Who are the people that we want on our team? Sometimes the people that we want on our team, we don't always have. And so we must create the team that we want, right? Especially within the church. It is not as when we are in our secular career where we go out and we interview and we bring people in based on the talent. Within our church community, God sends us the people that we need. And more often than not, they don't always come to us with the training that they need to be effective. They've got the right heart, they have the passion, but they do not always have the right training. So when we think about our team, we must first look at who are the people that we currently have on our team. And we must start that by making sure that we have taken an inventory of the skill sets that we have on our team. And so, when you know what you're starting with, you know how to pair people effectively. We don't always want to do that in the church because sometimes we're afraid if we do take an inventory of the skills we have, we may offend people. But it is in the best interest to know your team and know your team well. By knowing our team, we're looking at not just what our team brings to us in terms of their education, we're also looking at what our team brings to us in terms of their ability to be able to effectively identify themselves and what they bring to the team. So we talk about identifying who they are. We're really talking about knowing what their triggers are, knowing what excites them, knowing how they work with each other and where their thresholds are. So we're looking at my knowledge base, and I'm also looking at my ability to emotionally regulate when I get into situations that may be overwhelming. And so for me, when we think about leadership, we're really thinking about making sure your people know who they are. You're doing the inventory to make sure that you know who your people are. And by extension, you know how to peer your people. And I'll give you a little bit of where we kind of work with that in education and how we can use that in our church setting. In education, when we've got special population, your students were coming to you with special needs, you require 2 teachers in that room in most cases. Sometimes you have 2 teachers and paraprofessionals. So the adults in the room can be as many as the students they're serving in the room, which means they have to now know how to work with each other. As the teacher in that classroom, you're the driver of the bus, right? And so you must be able to motivate your co-teachers, your paraprofessional, and all of the service providers that push into your room. When I started with my husband in ministry, we realized that we could take that and use that in the church as well, because all of our teams within our church must have a driver. A driver who understands the vision of the pastor, and a driver who is able to motivate their team to be able to do the same thing within the church community, right? And so the pastor alone can't do the work. And so the pastor's job is to create team leads who fully understand their vision. One of the things I learned from you and Pastor Larner early when you came into New Jersey is leaders who serve with you must understand your vision and be able to execute that vision whether or not you're in the room. And so we took that as well, and we kind of marry that into everything that we do. And sometimes it does make you feel like you're saying it over and over and over, but it's only in those moments where your people truly understand what you want for your church through Jesus Christ, right? And so if we don't build a team that way, we have several pockets of people operating, doing really what they think you want them to do versus what you want to see happen through the vision that God has given you. So as we start to build others, we want to make sure we understand our team. We want to make sure that our team understands our vision. We want to make sure that we have the right people emotionally in the right place and the right skills in terms of the people that we have in that space as well. One of the other things that I've learned, and I'll share this, when we talk about leadership and team building, is making sure that our teams are able to empathize with the people they serve. Far too often we sympathize, right? We feel bad because something's happening and we know that that's supposed to hurt. But we can't really empathize because we've not been there. And as leaders in the church, we are called to be empathetic. We are called to serve a people who are often coming to us broken. They do not want our sympathy. They don't want us to feel bad for them. They want us to meet them where we are and where they are and serve them from there. And so I'll share this because this is something that we often say to our folks. You meet the people where they are and you help them grow from there. And that's the only way you're going to be able to truly evangelize someone is when they know you're not afraid to get in the mud, to empathize with where they are and be able to lift them up from there. So number one is you need to know your team. You need to train your team. Your team needs to understand your vision. And we have to be empathetic as leaders. We can't expect folks to follow us if we can't understand where they are. All right, and a last piece here, and I'll throw this in, and then I'll see if there's anything else you want me to specifically talk about. Coaching matters, right? I remember Pastor Lorna, when she came to New Jersey, one of the first piece of resource that she shared with us is Leading Ladies. And I realized in that moment that so many of us as new pastors' wives, we were placed in a role that we didn't really have a manual for, right? And so if we are going to be able to put someone in a position and expect them to be successful in that position, we have to coach them. What do you do when you get into situations that you're unfamiliar with? Who do you need to help you through those positions? And this is true in every place else. And so we must make this true in the church as well, right? In teaching, and I refer to teaching a lot because in teaching, we never put a new teacher in a space without a coach or a mentor. A matter of fact, under the law, a new teacher is required to have a mentor for the first 5 years of their teaching career. And that mentor teacher not only pushes into your classroom to support you and what you teach, they help you with data management, with student behavior, whatever concerns you have, you're able to go to that mentor teacher and say, what do I do and how do I do it? And so it's so important that as we train leaders in our church, we pair them with someone who has done the job. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. We're only 5 years old, so we can only give you 5 years worth of data. We have now cycled through our second group of leadership because we model Church of God. You are in a position until every General Assembly happens. When General Assembly happens, your position expires. You can go back into that role, but it's not your role. It's a role within the church, and you happen to serve in that role during the time between General Assemblies. After your time has expired, you still sit on the committee. Your job is to now coach the leaders who are coming in. And so our leaders serve and then they coach. And as a result, we only ever have to do that training once and then supervise because there's always someone coaching on the back end. Our women's ministry president, who now is serving in the capacity of a coach to the director that's operating in this position. So I highly recommend that we model that because unless we give folks somebody to look up to and somebody to fall back on, we're often putting them in a space that they've not been with the expectation that they're going to be successful. And so I bring that in, I model that because it works. And if there are solutions that work, I don't believe that we should be reinventing them at all. And then I want to touch on this. You build others. As you build your team, you build the morale of your team. Your team will work with you if they buy into your vision and if you're excited about what you've called them to do. If they know that your heart and your soul is in it, and if you motivate them, and so I always say create small wins, right? Create small wins so that you are able to celebrate those small wins with your team. It may be that you have a big goal that's year long. Where are your stop points? Are you able to stop with your team and say, great job? We've already reached mile marker 1. Again, I'll go back to education. We call them benchmarks. A teacher in training goes through a program for 4 years. Every year they meet a benchmark, and we celebrate that benchmark. In the 3rd year of their program, we celebrate that benchmark with a pinning ceremony. You've made it 3/4 of the way. Now you're going into student teaching. We should treat our leaders pretty much the same. We have a goal that we have at the beginning of each year, and we're saying, here's our big idea, our big goal. This is where we need to be before the end of the next church year. And each time they meet that goal, it is in our best interest to celebrate, right? I can go back to this statement my grandmother always said. She says, encouragement sweetens labor. It simple means that if you make me feel good about what you've asked me to do, then you don't have to worry because I am excited about doing the job, right? And so we're encouraging them. Do public celebrations. Those are, I know a lot of folks will say, I'm just here to serve. I don't necessarily need to be identified, but I will tell you, being able to hear somebody say thank you publicly encourages the people that are serving. And I'll say especially because most of these individuals are serving in a volunteer capacity. It's not a paid job. So saying thank you is a big paycheck for the persons that are serving with you and that are serving on your team. Bishop, how are we doing on time, sir?
We're doing well. You're doing well.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right, so I'll say this one next, right? And when I thought about how to say this in terms of leadership, the one thing that I reminisce on is how we would never keep a teacher in the position if they're not doing their job well. But oftentimes in the church, we would want to keep the individual in the position just because we need somebody in that space. I want to encourage us when we think about building our team, build your team, put the right people in the right place, train them, reassign when necessary. For example, you probably don't want Corvina in your children's ministry. I have a big voice and a big personality. I like to do it. I can do it if you ask me, but it's probably not the best place, right? And so when we do the inventory, we do the skills assessment, we look at the personality, we look at where they match. Don't be afraid to say, thank you for volunteering. We really need your service, but I do believe you'd be best suited in ministry X, although you've indicated that ministry Y is where you've always served, right?
Dr. Corbina, if I could interrupt you just for 1 minute. Can I get a microphone here?
Turn it back on.
Is it okay? We don't want to get too much. Let me interrupt you for 1 minute because you have just made a valuable point, and many people don't like to move the wrong person out of the wrong position, even though they don't fit in that position. So one of the things that we tried at our church that helped us was to give them smaller segments of time to evaluate them, just as you get evaluated on your job for what they call a probation period. We would tell the people, try the nursery or try baby church for 90 days, and then we will reevaluate whether or not you fit in that ministry, and then we would have an out as well as they have an out. I'll let you continue, but I wanted you to hone in on that because that is so valuable in building your team.
And that is why it's so important, too, to have a start and an end point with the people who are serving for you, because that start and that end point also gives you the out, right? So you're not having somebody who is serving lifelong in a position, even though they're not effective in doing the job that you're asking them to do, right? So that's the first thing, key and important. The job of service in a church, you're not doing it lifelong. You are in the position to serve, and I'll say this, at the will of your pastor. When they have asked you to serve, they're asking you to do something as the Lord leads. If it's not working, they reserve the right to move you out of that space. And I'm going to say that slowly because if you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would be the one to probably tell you, what you mean you're moving me? I like this position. You can't move me out of that position. I don't want to be moved. I just did this. But there are times when you have to keep in mind also that your pastor oversees the ministry. You are in a department. Your department has to function within the greater ecosystem of the church. And if it's not functioning, your pastor has the responsibility to reevaluate and reassign.
So good, Dr. Corvina, because most of people who find themselves in a leadership position in that ministry often look at the success of just that ministry
Yes,
and not
yes.
the entire vision of the pastor and the team as a
Absolutely.
whole, as a church. So good. I hate to interrupt you, but it's just so,
Oh.
these are great nuggets. So yes.
Absolutely, sir. That ecosystem, if we look at the ministry at large as an ecosystem that must function with a balance, then we realize that it's not just what we're doing that is effective, but we're only effective if the entire ecosystem functions with success, right? And I'll say, for example, I put it this way. We're not effective if youth ministry is thriving at the detriment of the rest of the church. We're not effective if women's ministry is functioning at the detriment of the church. And so I can use this example because this is probably common with most churches. Our women ministries are probably 10 times the size of most other ministries within the church. We have to then learn how to leverage what they're doing successfully to grow the other departments. So, for example, within that ecosystem, you may say to your women's ministry, how about you guys sponsor the youths for Winterfest because they can't afford to do it? Or you may say to the women's ministry, men's ministry is struggling. How about you help us bring your sons, your nephews, your husbands, tell them about it. Again, it's having the right people in the right place who understands the big picture of the effectiveness of the church and not just my department. Because when you start to think of it as my department, then it becomes my ministry within what God has called your pastor to do, not you.
Wow, so good, Dr. Corvina. I wanted to just, take a pause and make sure that you're writing your questions down. Put your questions in the chat on YouTube. We will actually go back and have a question and answer in time. But I wanted to just take it back to the foundation of how Jesus began his ministry. In Luke chapter 12, if you look at it, you'll see Jesus prayed all night long. And then he chose his team. He chose his team based on the fact that he knew that they needed to come together. But prayer was the catalyst to begin to bring them together. Dr. Corvina, one of the things that we often hear in leadership is team, this word team. And you talk about team. You talk about team and how valuable it is. In order to structure our churches for growth, we need healthy teams. Team of usher, team of greeters, these various teams. But one of the things I found is most of our people have never played any sports. And since they never played any sports, they don't understand the dynamics of team. They understand the dynamic of individual accomplishments or individual wins, but they don't understand what it means for the team to win. And if you're going to grow your church, it needs to be a team effort, and everybody needs to be taking the ball in the same direction and not just one. I take this right here as a quick side note. I've seen teams in sporting events have great talent. They have put together the greatest talent they can find in that sport. And one individual will take all the shots or kick all the goals if it's soccer, and that individual thinks, okay, I'm taking the opportunity because I'm so good at this that I'm going to run the ball, I'm going to shoot the ball, and in the process of one individual trying to shine, the whole team loses. And so I'm going to turn that back over to you there and let you continue with your training and your teaching, because this is so good, and how to structure your church for growth has to start with a healthy team.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, if I could transition just a little bit from, I know we talked about making sure that you have the right people in the right place at the right time. And then I'll go back to something that I've come to see the value of. When I did my doctoral research, and I looked at organizational leadership, one of my professors pointed out that we were working on a project, and she noted that we must name our project, right? And so I took away from that the value of giving everything you do a name. Your ministries within your church, name them. Your youth ministry, give it a name. Your women's ministry, give it a name. Whatever you have that does not have a name, you tend to forget.
Right.
Right? It's that thing. You remember that thing that we used to do? But when you give it a name, you can say, you remember when women worship? It's that event that we had. It's something that you now begin to look forward to, especially when you're dealing with youth ministry. They thrive when they have something to connect to. Give your departments not only leaders, but leaders who can create big visions of a name, that name that your young people can connect to, get them involved, print it on things that you're doing, print it on your shirts that you wear, give them an opportunity to be able to tell people about what they are a part of. A good group must have a name. And the big thing is making sure that name ties back into what your pastor is doing and what the big vision of the church is.
Yes.
And so that might mean that as a church, you must have regular scheduled meetings, not only with the pastor and the pastor's council, but with the departments within your church.
Yes.
So your youth leaders must be able to say, how does Ignite Youth tie back into what Beyond the Four Walls is doing? How does Seed Woman complement what pastor is doing in Beyond the Four Walls? I know you truly want to do this activity, but you have not yet been able to justify how this will put forward the mission of the church this year. And in our jobs, we have no problem doing it, right? You can't go to your department lead and say, I want an extra computer because it looks good. Or I want an extra computer because someone else is doing it. But we often see that in the church where folks will say, this is what my group needs without the explanation to it. And I must say, it's because we have not created a culture where we're asking for it, right? And as pastors, if we create that culture, your people will follow. It is an ecosystem. They're in your church because they trust your leadership, they trust your guidance, and no matter how much they rebel, they want it. They want to know that you stand for something and you value something. Your name means something, and I say this to our youth ministry. We're Ignite Youth, which means you can't be lukewarm.
Right.
You've never seen anything on fire and it's lukewarm, right? So you get their buy-in and you hold them accountable to it. If folks want to do things, allow them to, as long as they can justify it. If they're able to justify their why, don't be afraid to support it.
You just hit a big word, the why. And many times the teams come together and they say, we usher, but why? We do parking lot ministry, but why?
Mm-hmm.
We do choir, but why? We sing, but why? And many times the team doesn't know their why. And they're looking for a win, but they don't even know the when they have won because they never start out with their why.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I have been privileged to study over the short period of time and leadership that I've had through the military, as well as just hearing you made me dive deeper into leadership, as well as Dr. Garman. It began to marinate because I said, there's a crisis of leadership in the church. And that leadership doesn't necessarily mean that I stand up and do everything. Leadership means I build a healthy team around me that can carry the vision. And this is so critical during this season of the church. We're right around the corner from Easter season. And if we don't have healthy teams in place to be able to facilitate what God is bringing into us, then we're just going to lose those individuals. So building a team, having team building exercises, and making sure if we were to use a basketball analogy, if the guard is a guard, the guard is not a guard just because he's dribbling the ball, but he's dribbling the ball in order to pass it to someone so that that person can pass it to someone else, and then the team scores a point. But many times we don't know our why. We don't know why we're doing what we're doing, and we're just doing it. So make sure the leaders of your teams know the why and able to communicate the why to their team members. That will bring the team into a unified direction and function.
And that and I'll say this, and then I'll move to my next point. That is the reason why you must have people on your team that you trust.
Oh, good.
You must have people on your team that you trust. People who will have your back whether or not you're in the room, because you will have to share your heart as a leader. This is what the Lord has called me to do. This is how the Lord has called me to do it. You have to be able to be vulnerable with your team because they are the ones who are helping you achieve what God has called you to do. And so often we find ourselves with there are people in places, the wrong people in the right place. So the leader can't be vulnerable because there are people in places that they don't truly trust. And if you can't trust your team, they can't hear your heart.
Wow.
Because you're still guarded as to what has God given me that I need to share with my team, that my team is going to run with. And that is why it's key. Get the people who are not making the impact that you want out of the spaces that are the most impactful, because those are the spaces that the enemy infiltrates. And if they can get in your ministry through those spaces, then they're able to undermine your ministry from within.
So good. So those of you who are on YouTube, we're watching you. We're asking you to type your questions in, asking you to so that we can actually connect with you. This is just not for our studio audience, but it's for those of you who are on YouTube as well. Dr. Corvina, when we're talking about, the right people and connecting with these right people, there's some resources that I'm sure you came in contact with during your time of leadership, during your doctoral dissertation. Do you have any of those resources that may help somebody? You mentioned about making sure people are emotionally available. What are some of the resources that you feel will help in this team building that the pastor can take and say, hey, let's all read this book together and then begin to talk about it, or let's do this challenge together and build that team cohesiveness?
So one of the first things that I'll say is making sure that you have conducted an emotional intelligence inventory. There are several of those out there, and most of them are free. We often look at a skill inventory, but not necessarily an EQ inventory,
Wow.
right? I can have all the education there is, but I have the wrong attitude. I deal with things the wrong way. And when we have leaders who are not emotionally aware of the impact of their behaviors, it is the most detrimental to a ministry, because people will see your leader and judge your entire ministry platform on what one person did. And so when we start with our leadership, we're looking at the ability, the cognitive ability, the IQ, but we also want to make sure that we go out and look at some EQ as well. Don't be afraid to take those assessments. We want to ask people questions like, what triggers you? What trauma have you been through that if you see it again, that will cause you to have an explosion in ministry? We don't ask the real questions because we're afraid we might lose people. But what tends to happen is we lose more people when that individual explodes in the wrong place.
Yes.
So we could have put one person
So
through
good.
the right training and not lose anybody. Or maybe we lost one person who doesn't want to be trained, but we didn't do it. And so we put them in a space where we may lose an entire population because they now have to witness how this person responds to a situation.
So have you seen people who build teams based on talent, but
Yes.
definitely not
Yes, sir.
evaluating their emotional leadership ability? You know, it brings me to the thought of how Chick-fil-A is so successful at building their team
Yes, sir.
because they hire people not based on their talent, but based on their attitude,
Yes,
whether or
sir.
not they have the right
Yes, sir.
attitude. You can train people in their skills, but having that attitude, you can't train attitude. You
Absolutely.
Can't. So you're right. And the
I
IQ.
often tell them in teacher prep, I will take a teacher with the right attitude who can't do math. Because I can teach you how to do math. I can't teach you how to have the right attitude. I will take a teacher who can't pass the praxis, and I will prep you how to pass the praxis because you have the right attitude.
Yeah.
I do not want the person who can get 100% of the questions correctly, but I can't tell you you can't speak to the student like that.
Oh, that's so good. And so, putting someone on the team who is not capable of receiving correction
Yeah.
will destroy the team. And so one of the things I used to do before I ever put anyone on the team, I would always see if I can offend them. And if I can offend them, then they would quit before they brought their unhealthiness to the team. And so, Dr. Corvina, this is so rich. This is so rich. So we're going to take we're going to just take a moment, and we're going to begin to look at the questions that we have online, and then we're going to answer some of those, and then we're going to come back. I'm so thankful for you to joining tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm watching people watching us on YouTube, but you're forgetting to click that subscribe button. We need our subscribers to come on and get our algorithm higher because of your subscribing. So the questions, let's see if we can read some of these questions and begin to answer some of those questions.
So the question says, how do you deal with people who have their own agendas? Do you want me to go for it, sir?
Yeah, it may be beneficial for you to take this, Dr. Corvina, because it would be healthier for our team building.
So I'm going to look at it from twofold. So I always give you what I know, right? The well you pour from is the well you've drank from. And this is my 20th year of teaching. So I've drank a lot from the teaching Kool-Aid and a lot of how it works, right? In teaching, we have what's called the Common Core agenda. The Common Core standards are the standards that all teachers must use. If I walk into classroom A in Willenboro in May, they must be at a particular place with the Common Core state standards. If I walk into Newark, they should be at the same place as well. And your superintendent has the ability to say to you, why are you not there? You must be able to articulate, why am I doing something different than the rest of my school district? In church, we have to be able to take the same approach. A lot of times people have different agendas because, let's start with the us, right? I always start with me. What can I do differently as a leader? They have a different agenda because they don't fully understand my agenda. So I'm owning that first, right?
Yeah.
If I own that first, then I can tell you what the agenda is because I'm assuming that you're doing something different because you don't know what I want to do.
So if the leader doesn't make the why clear, then the people will come up with their own why, and then it'll cause you the frustration because you'll see them doing something, but they could think that they're doing what you want, but in all actuality, because the why hasn't been made clear.
So we often say, that's a great one, Bishop. We often say, this is what I want, or this is what I think I want, or this is what I see, but we haven't really given the how. We haven't really said who we want you to partner with. And sometimes maybe the church leaders want to give you that freedom where they want to say, here's my big idea, come up with ways to achieve that. So that is why it's so important for the leaders to articulate my why, my how, if that's what you want, this is how I also want you to do it, right? With creative liberty, and this is who I want you to work with. It's so important that we make that clear so others can follow us. They can only follow if we've set the path for them to follow in. If not, they're going to create their own path.
That is so good. I have a shameless plug, but it's very good at this time. I have in my book, Struggling with Starting, my 3T principles. Touch them with love, train them with care, and teach them with passion. And a lot of times we will tell people what we want and think they understand how to accomplish it, and they don't understand how to accomplish it because we have not taken the time to walk through them step by step in training. And so some of the results we get is based on our own human understanding or our interpretation of what the leader may have communicated. So as Dr. Garman would say, that he took, when you think you've communicated 1,000 times, you probably under-communicated your why. And so don't start off with pointing your finger at them saying they are coming up or they're not a team player if you haven't done an assessment to communicate what the team goals are.
And that's why I started there, because if you don't first evaluate what have I done as a leader to be able to show those who are following where I want you to go, then you're always going to blame the team versus look at the you. What could I have done differently? Now, after we've done that, the next step is to look and say, do I still see alternative agendas? And if you still see alternative agenda, we're going back to the points earlier, you've got the wrong people in the right place, and they need to be reassigned. If you can't follow the agenda that is set ahead of you, you could have all the skills you want, you're the right person in the wrong place, or you have been given what you can't clearly accomplish because you can't follow the directives that are ahead of you.
And it's important. As the coach, you mentioned something about the coach. So if you see someone on your team who's not a team player, remember the entire team already knows that person is not a team player, and they're waiting on the coach to make the decision to sit that person on the bench.
Yes, sir.
If they don't sit that person on the bench, the morale of the entire team is going to begin to fall apart. And then you may lose qualified team players because of your lack of leadership.
Yes, sir.
That team player may say, you saw that individual, you know that they're not a team player, you know that they have a bad attitude, and you didn't make the correction. Therefore, I'm going to take my talent to another team. And that's why you lose some people from your church, because of you not coaching those who already everyone the team knows needs to be set down.
And it's so easy to spoil the team that you have if you're unable to correct and reassign. And then I'll say this as a third part to this answer. Remember, they are not you. So you have a vision that you want to achieve. If you have room for individuals to be authentic, it might look very different from how you would do it. And sometimes that may seem like a different agenda, but I often say, look at the end result.
Wow.
Are you going to get what you intended to get?
Yes.
If that's the case, then we're not trying to change the method, because what I'm looking for, I'm going to get. But I'm allowing the individual to be authentic so that they can feel a part of my dream.
So good, so good. So stay tuned. Momentarily, we're going to switch over to Zoom so that we can interact with you live, one-on-one, so that you'll know that we are personally looking at you and answering your questions. But we're going to take one or two more questions while we're here on YouTube for the audience who are here, who are here in the studio, as well as those who will listen in on the replay. So, Dr. Corvina, you see any other questions that are presented on YouTube that we want to answer here, or some of them we'll take to Zoom?
What is the difference, sir, between a leader and a boss? And can we talk about the algorithms to make sure they understand what we mean?
So, online, if you do not subscribe, then whenever you go in to try to pull up this video, they go lower and lower in your feed. But if you subscribe, then they'll come up quicker for the audience to be able to look at them. So that's what we mean when we say algorithm.
The difference between a leader and a boss. A leader is someone who has the capacity to get somebody to follow them in whatever direction they're going.
Regardless of whether or not they are in the position or not. If
Yes,
they
sir.
are a leader, they will attract followers.
Yes, sir.
But a boss is someone who is hired and paid and demands results. And you're demanding the results of your employees through threatening of pay or reduction in salary or other type of vices, whereas leaders will attract people who want to follow them. Let's look at Jesus as an example. Jesus is the greatest leadership example you could ever find. He finds people who are employed in their own fields, and he walks up to them and he says, "Follow me." And they followed him. Why? Because they saw that he had something valuable that would help build them. Dr. Corvina, while I'm thinking about it, one of the detriments to trying to build a team is often not recruiting people. Putting up a sign on the board and saying, if you want to volunteer for the ushers ministry, you're probably going to get the wrong people. But it is very beneficial for you as a coach, as a leader, if you can, to find those people who have the right attitude and pour your life into them to build a team rather than ask for volunteers. Just be like Jesus and say, hey, follow me. And then that you will know whether or not they see you as having something valuable enough to build them.
Yes, sir. We have another question. It says, what if you are limited by the size of your team?
I'm hoping I would answer this properly. I'm not sure if I have the full understanding of what the question is, but I'm thinking they're talking about the size of their church or the size of the people the amount of people they have around them.
It could be twofold. It could be, we could look at it from the perspective of what if I don't have enough people, or what if I don't have the people with the capacity? So we could attack this question from twofold. So what if I don't have enough people? I say train who you have until you get who you want.
Yes, train who you have. And then the Bible says, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he will send in laborers. And when the Lord sends in those laborers, you've got to do your work to make sure they emotionally, how do you put that? They're emotionally healthy enough to help you in the team and put them in the right place on the team. Because if not, then you'll just pray for laborers to come in and you use the person in the wrong place. And once you put them in that place, it's hard to take them down out of that place. So start with what you have. Show the Lord that you're a good steward. You have a good training program. If someone walks in the door, step one, how do you take them from being in the pew to being a part of the team? What are your training methods? And just because, one of the things, I like to use the sports analogy because this is what it is, a team. Just because they came from another ministry with great talent, they came from another team. They were the highest scorer on that team. They were the greatest kicker on that team. Just because they function well on that team Don't assume or don't take that for granted that they're going to come and be on your team and understand your vision. You've got to take them through. I'm glad you were successful at your last place, but this is what we do here. Just because you're successful, I'm going to use the analogy of KFC and Chick-fil-A. Just because you're successful at KFC doesn't mean you're going to be successful at Chick-fil-A. You come from KFC, you're a general manager, and you come over and you say, hey, I used to cook and do well at KFC, but now you're at Chick-fil-A, and you never say, my pleasure. Well, guess what? That's the core value of Chick-fil-A. And they never have that right attitude. So it's probably because you just put them on the team based on their success at another location. Nope, take them through that training and make sure they understand your why.
Yes, sir. That's key. One of the other things that I also want to say, you touched on it, is you have to have consistent leadership training.
So good.
In our first 5 years, one of the things that we learned is you must train the people before it's time to place the people. Sometimes you have to train on the job, right? When in my secular career, we started building a program with the students in the program before we knew how the program would end. And while we ended well, the work that we had to put in to get there, we did not have to do it had we done the right training ahead of time. We run a spring and a fall training institute every year.
Wow.
Our leaders must go through this institute. What we've decided is we will not appoint a leader who chooses not to go through the institute. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter how versed you are. If you choose not to, one, submit yourself to hear the vision of the church, you're not ready to lead with the church.
So good. Let's put that in the church vernacular, a church conversation. I remember I had a pastor, and he said, hey, if you're going to be a part of my leadership team, you must be at Sunday school. Okay. No Sunday school, no leadership. If you were scheduled to usher that day and you were not at Sunday school, you would sit down. Yes. There was no such thing. And so that is how you evaluate your leaders. Yes. One of the things we did was every year we would take all our leaders through the same, like you said, leadership training. And we would say, hey, if you don't show up for this leadership training, then you cannot be a part of our leadership. Why? Because sometimes the leaders who got you to level 1, or maybe the leaders who got you to 50, if they don't get that training, they won't be able to take you to 100.
Yes, sir.
And so you need to constantly have that training. So good, Dr. Corvina. That is a great point. Great point.
I do want to remind everyone, though, that we're getting ready to go into the Zoom room. And we've seen, there's a question that I saw that before we answer, we do want to make sure that we have some clarity. So Pastor Lenny, if you would jump on in the Zoom room as we're getting ready to come on into the e-campus, as we call it here at Beyond the Four Walls.
Good.
Come on into the e-campus and let's talk about it. But if you're not going to come in, there's one thing I want to leave you with. Train your replacement.
Wow.
Tomorrow is promised to no man. There should be somebody in your church that understands what you do and how you do it. It is not because you're training somebody to take your job. It's because tomorrow you may not be there to do your job.
So good.
And it's not because you're young, you're old, you're middle-aged. It's because it's the way that is most beneficial for your organization. Let's look at Apple. Their CEO is gone. Apple is still here and thriving because there were people in that institution who knew exactly what he wanted, how he wanted it, and understood his long-term vision. Train your replacement, not because you want to vacate your job, but because you don't know what the future holds.
So good, Dr. Corvina. I want to thank Dr. Corvina for her willingness to share what God has placed in her life. I want to thank you for joining us here in the studio as well as on YouTube. This has been a powerful night. Structuring your church for growth requires that you have a healthy team, and you have a team around you that understands your vision. We're going to go off of YouTube. I appreciate your heart to be a part of this journey with us. You don't want to miss our next training that is coming up. It is going to be so valuable for you. If you're not going into the e-campus, then we will see you again on next first Monday of the month, where we will begin talking about how to retain visitors. You you definitely don't want to miss that.
Oh, I love
Thank you
that.
again for being a part of the night. Thank you, Dr. Corvino. We
You're
really
welcome, sir.
appreciate your insight, your leadership in this endeavor. Let's switch over to our e-campus, and then we'll answer some of your one-on-one questions. Blessings.